It sure is nice to come home at the end of a long day and enjoy a podcast. But you know what makes the experience that much better? Relaxing with a few puffs of smoke from my McQueen pipe. At McQueenPipes.com, I was able to find the perfect smoking pipe to suit my nerdy, yet dignified sensibilities. I especially love that each pipe is designed and handcrafted by a true artisan, and that all of their pipes are inspired by fantasy books and movies like The Lord of the Rings. Being a bit of a hobbit myself, my pipe is called the Barrel Rider, but they've also got pipes for wizards, rangers, dragon riders, or even goblins. If pipe tobacco isn't your thing, no worries. McQueen Pipes has got you covered with attachments for vaping or even cannabis. Head on over to McQueenPipes.com and use the code BIOGRAPHERS at checkout to receive 15% off of your entire order. Go ahead, treat your nerdy heart to something you'll cherish and enjoy your podcast listening experience in style with a McQueen pipe. That's Mac like mac and cheese and Queen like the band. McQueenPipes.com and use the code BIOGRAPHERS at checkout for a 15% discount on your whole order. Cheers, everyone, and happy podcasting.
I do hope you can see me today from where you are.
Ich bin ein Feeling.
If I'm generally anything, I guess I'm generally miserable. This modern world of science and invention is of particular interest to women.
The people, I would say, there is no patent. Would you patent the sun?
I regard myself as a soldier, though a soldier of peace.
Welcome to the Biographers.
Keep it up. Keep being good. Love you. Like,
Yeah,
kind of
always,
a thing. Like,
always,
I
man.
don't ever want to like put you down or bring you down or anything like that. No. Although I know I can be annoying when you'll be like, look at this knife maker. And I'm like, yeah, it's okay.
That's true. That's true.
And you're like, no, it's really
weird,
great
man.
work.
I've been a knife maker for close to 13 years, and I have never had a shop-related incident. And then in the course of these last 8 days, I've had to go to the hospital twice because of shop stuff. It was just like, what's going on right now?
You might just be getting to that point of where you're so comfortable that you're making the little mistakes that
I'm just being a little loose with it. Like, I was working on just cleaning up some burrs for some sand mine knives that I'm going to be making for a class at Hardy and Fuller.
Cool.
And I was using a grinding with a contact wheel, and the piece of steel that I was working with got caught between the tool rest and the wheel and sucked my hand down. I was wearing gloves too, and sucked my thumb, and it went through the glove and then made a cut down my thumbnail.
Ow.
And now like my thumbnail was like not lined up anymore from one side of the cut to the other. So I had to go to the urgent care to be like, hey, is this going to grow properly if I just like tape it up? And they're like, no, we got to move it and glue it together in a certain way. So
gross. I don't like that stuff.
I know. Now, which by the way, I've just recently learned this. My phone has a setting where I can use a one-handed keyboard. So you can shift all of the letters of your keyboard to one side. I didn't realize that. And that's so nice now because I was like, can't use my thumb because it's like wrapped up like a mummy. Nice. Because, and like a cut is fine, but when it's the nail, it takes so long to heal and it hurts so bad. Yeah, it's so annoying.
That's gross. Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Biographers. This is an episode of Office Hours, so obviously you're going to hear a lot more of this kind of conversation because we have no we have a little bit of an agenda. We have things that we like, corrections and questions and whatnot that we're going to go over, but we're not actually onto any of our subjects today. So hopefully y'all are in for just a laid back convo.
Yeah, let's get into
like
it.
all the other podcasts.
Yeah, this is the part where we get to show off our personalities as opposed to actually coming up with interesting content.
Oh, that's true. It was, again, I feel like I brought this up before in the past, but it was, I looked on the Apple new and noteworthy section yesterday because Mondays is when they put out new features, and I saw a new like celebrity one. I won't get into the details of it or whatever because I don't want to put anybody on blast here and make anybody feel bad or make any enemies. But it was really funny because the description of it was like so and so brings a totally new perspective into the landscape of podcasts. They're going to be having unfiltered interviews with different people, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, so you mean like every other podcast ever?
Yeah. Like, we're not like other podcasts because we talk about true crime
the
and
real stuff.
What we ate for dinner.
Right.
It's just
And we
like-
ask the real questions with celebrities, you know, like, talk to me about your childhood and what was your relationship like with your parents? And it's like, yeah, like
we ask the real questions like, what's your workout routine?
Every other celebrity has that podcast that it's like, oh yeah, I get on the mic and just like have unfiltered conversations, you know, whatever.
One of my favorite sort of people who critique that is Renaissance Periodization, RP Strength on YouTube. The other Dr. Mike, there are two Dr. Mikes that I follow. One is just a general clinician. He works in a hospital and he just, talks about health. The other one is a bodybuilder.
Okay.
And he's also a doctor in physiology. So he just goes through different celebrities who talk about their workout routine. And he's like, steroids. That guy has a trainer. He doesn't know what he's talking about. The trainer is doing a good job. He has no idea what his schedule or routine is. Steroids. Terrible job. Like,
can I ask? Maybe we have to cut this out or something because I don't want to incur the wrath of The Rock. But does he say anything about The Rock?
No, I didn't watch any episode about The Rock yet. But apparently, John Cena has like one of the most legit workout situations of all time, and also
seems like it.
Of course, he takes steroids, and he has to say
Cena?
that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He has to say that he doesn't take steroids because steroids are a controlled substance. So when you're a bodybuilder or a wrestler and somebody like, an interviewer, Jimmy Kimmel or whatever, asks you, hey, do you take steroids? You say no. So, that's what that is. Okay. But
that
apparently,
makes me sad, honestly.
Well, in physiologically, steroids are used to gain muscle once you have already gotten pretty much past your physical limits. Of course, people can take them when that's not the case. And that's when you see lots of weird side effects. That's when you see all sorts of, weird hormonal shifts and stuff. But a lot of the times, if you're a professional like John Cena or a bodybuilder like Dr. Mike, they'll only use it once they've kind of reached their biological cap to take themselves a little bit further. So, it's like everything in life. It's a moderation thing. Man, I bet everybody, I've talked about health and fitness so much just in like these little cold intros for all these episodes. I bet everybody just thinks I'm so ripped and not just like this flabby 6'4", guy who's hunched over a typewriter.
You call yourself flabby, but I think 99% of people that would see you, especially because you're very tall.
I'm tall, so
are
I
just
wear
like,
well.
yeah, you just look totally average. You know, you look like you're in the right shape for your body.
Yeah, I wear it well. But yeah, I think this is super interesting to just like be like, yeah, no, that's total bullshit. And Hulk Hogan, he has, and you just got to watch the video. He has this 80s like workout routine where it's just like the worst advice ever. He's like, only do bicep curls. When you wake up in the morning, it's got to be 6 a.m. You have 3 beers and 4 egg yolks. And people would like straight up ask him, be like, so what did your diet consist of when you were at WWE? And he was like, cocaine and about 15 beers.
Jeez.
And Dr. Mike is like, yeah, that makes sense. I can tell.
That seems like Hulk Hogan's personality, to be honest with you. By the way, am I the only one that I know his name is Hulk Hogan, but I have always called him Hoke.
Hoke?
Really? Hulk Hogan. But it's just how it rolls out of my mouth. I'll be like, oh yeah, Hulk Hogan.
Huh. Oh, you know what? You're right. Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan? Like, I say it like Hoke. I don't say Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
Like, there's no enunciation there.
Who's your favorite wrestler?
I mean, I don't know that I necessarily have one because I don't care enough or whatever.
That's fair. But after that video you showed me of like why wrestling is the best thing ever.
Oh, well, what, wrestling isn't wrestling?
Yeah.
I mean, look, I to this day will pop on wrestling because it's just a great background noise to have, and then occasionally while I'm doing the dishes I can look over and be like, cool, and then like move on with my life. I have nothing invested in any of it, right? I will say
maybe as a kid or something.
I mean, even as a kid, I didn't really watch wrestling. I mean, I've always thought The Undertaker was cool, but I feel like everybody thinks The Undertaker's cool, so that's kind of like a cop-out answer. I mean, I also really liked Mankind.
Mankind. I can't remember him.
Mankind wore like this crazy looking, almost like Leatherface mask.
Oh yes, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, Mankind. I always thought was really cool. Just because of how he looked, and he was just this
I
big,
think
burly
Undertaker's
dude.
just for sure going to be my favorite forever.
Well, The Undertaker, he almost exists outside of wrestling in that he's not necessarily one of those characters that, like, you know, in the middle of a dude giving a speech in the ring where I want to know where you people are at when it comes to, and then the music comes in, and then like, so
he's like the
they
Thanos.
go quiet, and then somebody walks in the challenge or whatever. I feel like The Undertaker doesn't do that. It's like, no, he exists in a realm of wizards and witches, and occasionally he is summoned to the Hell in the Cell, and like...
Yeah, that's so funny.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, I would say, as of right now, though, and I know he is very, very popular amongst the wrestling community, there's a dude called LA Knight.
I haven't seen him yet.
Yeah, again, it's like you have to be watching
Rhea
wrestling
Ripley, though,
now.
has, for some strange reason, ended up on my Instagram feed on occasion.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, she's like this 6'4", like goth buff lady who the internet is going crazy over. Shalane and I both.
Rhea Ripley,
which is hilarious because Rhea Ripley is also the name of Shalena's grandma, but everybody in Shalena's family is obsessed with Rhea Ripley because Sharon, Shalena, they used to all watch wrestling when they were younger. And Rhea Ripley's just this tall, very hot, like goth lady. You know, it's great to watch, but it's also the same name as her like 90-year-old kind of racist grandma, which is hilarious.
So, LA Knight, people kind of not necessarily make fun of. It's like the people in wrestling make fun of him, but he's actually a crowd favorite. But like, so right now, unfortunately, I don't know if you know this, but Logan Paul is now in professional wrestling.
I don't care what Logan Paul does, man.
Nobody fucking does. He's the worst human. I don't know what it is about the Paul brothers, but I loathe these two people.
They just feel like kind of grown up iPad kids where it's like, I am looking for a quick fix. They're almost like the mean comments on an Instagram post personified.
Sure.
Where it's like attention grabbing first, ethics second.
I get the impression that neither of them know who they actually are. But they're desperately searching to figure out who they actually are.
Yeah.
So like whatever the other one who's challenged Mike Tyson, it's like he has no idea who he is. So I'm gonna make a name for myself in boxing by challenging a bunch of washed up boxers to make a name for myself. And it's like, you're not actually doing the thing. We all know that this is like.
I think we've talked about this. I feel like it's a lose-lose situation, right? If he loses, of course he lost because he fought Mike Tyson. And if he wins, of course he won because he
paid off Mike Tyson.
Well, or because he fought a retired boxer. He's not in his prime anymore.
Yeah.
Granted, obviously, against the average human being, Mike Tyson could just like obliterate you.
Yes.
But against other people who are training to be boxers, he is retired.
Yeah.
That'd be like, 50 years from now, I'm going to, challenge Usain Bolt to a race? Come on.
But I will say, in the world of wrestling, Logan Paul, fortunately, is the villain, and people boo him every single time he comes out into the ring. But that's like he's adopting that as the persona, as like, oh yeah, I'm the heavy. If you're going into the TV show slang, he's like, oh yeah, I'm the bad guy that people don't want to root for or whatever. But I'm still going to take this thing by storm or whatever.
Yeah. But
he and the guy LA Knight seem to have a feud going on these days, and the kind of joke that he'll make about LA Knight is that he is basically just a white guy doing an impression of The Rock. And he's sort of not wrong. Like if it's like, that's the funniest part about it is it's like, oh, I hate you, Logan Paul, but that's a good one. That's true. That is kind of what he's doing. And which is kind of why I like him, is that he's just sort of like, yeah, he knows what he's doing. He's like, that's what the crowd wants, is basically another The Rock without The Rock,
My mom was not a huge violence person when I was a kid. So I think that's why wrestling never showed. Like, the things that all my friends were obsessed with were Bionicles, wrestling, and Power Rangers. And I never got into any of those. Like, I grew up when I was living in LA, all my friends were like Mexicano, and that was like the shit. Like, if you were a Mexican kid in 2008, all you cared about were Bionicles, Power Rangers, and wrestling. Like,
yes.
That's
fairly accurate.
That is the microcosm that your whole world is surrounded by.
I also, question for you. because one of my best friends growing up, a guy named Alex Cohen, loved wrestling and was obsessed with wrestling. And I'll be honest, in the school that I grew up in going to, at least not that I was super aware of, there were not loads and loads of Jewish kids. Although there are many in Los Angeles, in my particular part of town, it was mostly like Asian kids and stuff like that, some Mexican kids, some white kids, and then that was sort of it. But I think my class was like 62% Asian kids. So I'm just kind of curious, though, because it has felt like a thing, even as I've watched like stand-up comedians and stuff like that, it feels like it's a thing for Jewish kids to really love wrestling.
That one went right over my head.
Yeah.
I think because I did not live a very secular life until I was like 10 or 11, that seed for wrestling was never planted. But like, if you grew up with like parents who were not super Orthodox, I'm sure that that's the case.
Okay.
I personally couldn't speak to it because before then, I don't know, what media did I really enjoy when I was little? It was everything on Discovery and the History Channel because I was a very boring kid. Like at 8 years old, I would watch History Channel at like 6 a.m. about like World War II. And my sister would be so mad because she wants to watch something on Disney. And I'd be like, no, Mom said that I get to use History Channel until 11, you know?
Hey, I think that's way more exciting. Like, you know, I think kids are entitled to love whatever they like to love or whatever. But I will say that it's really funny. Like when, like last year, whatever it was, Halloween or something, my niece, two of my nieces, and then their cousin, all dressed up as descendants. Do you know about descendants?
No.
Okay. Again, this is one of those situations where I go, kids, you're allowed to love whatever you love. I really genuinely don't care. Like, because I loved things that my parents looked at and went, I just don't understand this. This is so silly. So it's not necessarily oh, I hate this or anything. It's just like one of those, like, it's so corny and tacky to me that I'm just like, this is so lame. I can't even explain why this is so lame. But Descendants is a Disney.
Oh, yes. Okay. It's where all the villains' kids go to like a high school together.
And it's not just the villains.
It's almost like an anime, really.
Almost, but to me worse, because it's not just I don't think just the villains. I want to say that's
it's the descendants of like Cinderella and Maleficent and Ursula.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay. I do remember that. My little brothers, right as they got too old for it, it came out. So they watched it and then immediately got over it.
Yeah.
I do remember that. It's mad corny. That's just what it is.
And it's also just very like
what it feels like is like those old isekai animes, but live action. And the isekai animes were already so corny. Like, I've transported to a world where everybody's a fairy or something. You remember those all over the place. But then making it live action just adds like another level of cringe that I just don't think I can handle.
And I guess for me that it's one of those where I look back at my childhood and I know things change and blah, blah, blah. It's all good. But it felt like there were more original things that I was into as a kid, right? So Power Rangers. Yes, Power Rangers went through 17 iterations and it was Turbo Rangers and whatever else.
Power Rangers is one of the corniest series of all time.
Very corny.
Okay.
And it's, and I looking back on, I mean, I think they had it on Netflix for a little while, the first few seasons, and I watched some of it and just like, this is so bad. Like,
we're going to get a corrections from Power Rangers fans being like, correction, in this episode, you said that Power Rangers were corny. You're wrong.
I need to correct you on this one. It's actually amazing. But I'm just saying, there were things like that, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Transformers,
TMNT.
Bionicles. Pokemon was one of my biggest obsessions for a really long period of time, to where it felt like there were these original things that I was like, hey, you might not understand it, but I do, and I love it.
Yes.
So I think that's why it feels, I don't even know how to say it. It's like, it's because it's not disappointing. It's not like, lame. It's just this sort of like, it just feels less inspiring and less like, less great, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it just feels like all this other stuff that we're seeing, rather than these powerhouse entertainment companies. Exactly. They can't just make something new. They got to be like, well, let's make the prequel. Let's make the 20-year long sequel. Let's make Beetlejuice. Let's make Hocus Pocus 2. And you're like,
yeah,
who really wants this?
Dude, can I tell you how much I want a new Halloween classic? Like, I love Halloween so much. Halloween is probably my favorite holiday of all time, bar none. And I just want a new, like, I remember when I was a kid, okay, what is it called? Halloween Town. Was Halloween Town your generation? Because we have so much crossover. Okay, it was a Disney original movie, very corny, but it's basically about this girl who finds out her mom was a witch, and there's like a magic bus that takes her to a Halloween town where there's like living skeletons and ghosts and stuff.
It's kind of cool.
It was fun. It was original. It was, once again, an isekai sort of thing, like transported to another world type of thing. And it was so good. And there's that. There's Hocus Pocus. There's Beetlejuice. I'm trying to think. What are the other Halloween classics? Obviously, of course, the horror movie selection is great, but I'm talking spooky movies.
Yes, I was going to say.
I
feel like horror
maybe
is
4 or
still
5,
going pretty strong.
And there are no new originals, I think, since like 2014, 2015. Hotel Transylvania was probably the last original Halloween sort of premise that I've seen, and I feel like we're just been playing those movies just over and over again.
I mean, I will say, did you ever see the movie Trick or Treat?
No.
Check it out. It's usually on like HBO Max or whatever it's called now, or at least one of the streaming services. It's by the same writer,
I've seen
director.
The character. He looks adorable.
Yeah, they'll get the pumpkin head or whatever. Watch it, because it's one of those movies that it's like, it's not scary. It's not horror. It's like spooky, a little creepy.
It's just like fun, you know?
And this sort of like just touch of Tim Burton,
mm-hmm.
right? Where it just feels like somebody is trying to have fun with the spooky genre rather than like really trying to scare you into something. It's just like, no, we're having fun here, and it'll be a little creepy, a little spooky, and a little like, whoa, that's kind of creepy, but like never to the point where you're like, whoa, dude, hang on, right? Where like, I don't know if you've seen any of his movies. Have you seen any of Ari Aster's movies?
No.
So I want to say his debut, I could be wrong about it, but his debut was a movie called Hereditary. And then he made a movie called Midsummer. Some people say it's Midsommar, but I've always heard it just Midsummer. And then most recently he did a movie called Beau is Afraid.
Okay, I've seen clips from them, and I've purposefully avoided them because I feel like it's nightmare. Like
it's not nightmare. But it is definitely like,
question your sanity.
Holy, what is happening to me right now? Like it is horrific. A lot of the stuff that he's
yeah, something about Midsummer specifically freaks me out because it's shot entirely in daylight, and it's like, you can't ruin the daytime for me. That's not allowed.
Yeah. Nighttime,
I'm allowed to be scared, but when it's the day, I cannot be thinking about your stupid movie.
And that's one of the crazy things about it, and it's one of the commentaries I've read is that that's what's so psychologically like messed up about it and how it screws with you, is that a lot of times our perception of these horror things that happen are happening at night. So he very specifically made this whole thing take place at this Midsummer Festival in like, I want to say it's Norway or something like that, like northern, one of those Baltic countries that's way in the north, to where their days are super long and their night times are like an hour.
Yeah.
And so all of this messed up stuff is happening in like the bright sunny day. And so your brain doesn't quite know how to process all of it, you know?
It's like Children of the Corn in that way too.
How so?
Children of the Corn was also I think most of the horror was shot in daytime, right?
It's been so long since I've seen that movie.
I watched Children of the Corn. I pirated it off of, I think, Pirate Bay, back when that was a thing. When I was like 13 or 14.
Okay.
I watched it with my girlfriend at the time in my room, and I was like, I'm not going to the bathroom alone. You're going to walk with me, because I was just so scared. But it basically, the premise is, it plays on the fear of driving to Kansas.
Yeah.
Which is just like, you get stuck in the middle of nowhere around these like weird country folk that you have nothing in common with, and it turns out that they're actually a cult.
Yeah.
And it's just like a cult of children, where the children have killed all of the adults and they sacrifice all the adults, and there's like a little child preacher who like runs the cult.
I remember, some of that.
Yeah.
So, well, I'll put it this way. So I personally, if you would want to watch them with me, I would happily rewatch both Midsummer and Hereditary. I recently rewatched Beau is Afraid, and although it is in its own weird ways horrific sometimes, it's more than anything a dark comedy. Mm-hmm. A very, very, very dark comedy, albeit, but a dark comedy. And both Hereditary and Midsummer, they're not horror movies in any ways that you would normally consider them to be horror movies. So it's not like there's a boogeyman that's after anybody. It's not like there is, you drank the water and then now your body is falling apart. It's not like that kind of stuff.
Oh, that one was creepy.
It's all kind of, it's not like we were talking about The Fly earlier today. It's not like that where it's just like, oh God, this is just so crazy and disgusting or whatever. It's more like there are things that happen that are horrific, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of how he structures the movies are, you're going through it and you're going like, what is actually happening right now? What is actually... How is this all going to fit together? What's the meaning of this? It's a lot of that kind of stuff, and then it gets to the end, and you'll marinate on them for weeks.
Yeah, see, that's not my thing.
But they're so good.
I understand, but I already marinate on other horrifying things just due to anxiety. I'm not sure if I need more things to stew. You know what I'm saying? I want to be scared. Yeah. For approximately 3 hours after I watched the movie. After that,
but it's not that kind of scary. Like you're not going to marinate it on like, oh, I don't want to go to the bathroom alone. It's just not that kind of horror.
Yes, but it's psychological horror.
It's not even psychological horror. It's really hard to describe until
it's a horror that I want you to watch. So I want it to be whatever it is that you'll want me to watch.
Maybe, but really, it is. I don't know. He's just one of those people that it feels like in today's day and age, there are not many of him out there.
Yeah.
Many people like him, not just It feels like there was this time where you had a pretty big laundry list of directors and writers that were just, they had this vision and voice, right? Martin Scorsese's and Steven Spielberg's and Cronenberg's and David Lynch's and all these different people that like, you would go, oh, dude, Scorsese's coming out with a new movie. Let's go see the new Scorsese. Yeah. Let's go see the new David Lynch.
That's how I feel about the Coen brothers.
That's a great example too. One of my favorites of all time. It's like I gotta go see the new Coen brother movie.
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once is probably one of my favorite movies of all time.
But that's not the Coen brothers.
Isn't that? No. Who is that?
That's the Daniels.
That's what I meant. Daniels. Sorry.
I would say that's a good example too, though. Not a lot of people saw it, but like Swiss Army Man, if you haven't seen it, you should. I can't say that it's like one of my favorite movies, but it's one of those that you'll see and you'll go, nobody's making movies like this.
Yeah.
And for that reason alone, I really
it's like
respected
for the love
it and enjoyed
of movies
it.
A little bit.
And also because it's a very out there idea, and somehow they're able to make it all pull off on screen. Ari Aster's the same way. He's one of those people that's like, he just has this really strange, unique vision and sensibility for how he wants to present things. And you think something's going to be one thing and it's actually another thing.
Yeah.
So like Midsommar is one of those movies that like, it's really not until the very end that you go, oh, that's what this movie is about.
Yeah. Did you ever watch The Village?
Yeah, the M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was okay.
Yeah, it was okay.
A lot of people loved it. I thought it was just okay.
It was fine. I watched it when I was a kid, so anything could have scared me, but I feel like I watched it recently when I was younger and I was not quite as stoked.
It's still scary. Like even when you know that the creatures are not real and then that one is stalking her at the end, it's still freaking scary, man. True. Like it scared the hell out of me. So
question. Is Harry Potter for you or your household a Halloween movie or a Christmas movie?
Kat watches it throughout the year, dude. She'll just throw on Harry Potter as like I'll put on Seinfeld, even though I've seen it 30,000 times, and she'll just put on a Harry Potter movie.
That checks out.
That's how she is.
For me, I've seen some people who are Halloween Harry Potter folks. I feel like I'm a Christmas Harry Potter folk. I don't know why. Maybe it's because every Harry Potter has a Christmas scene in it.
Sure.
I don't know. But I also understand the whole thing is witches and wizards, so it makes more sense to categorize it for October. But I view it as a December series.
I mean,
same with Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings also is very squarely put into Christmas time.
That I agree with, but do you know why?
No.
Because they were always released in December. When they first came out.
Harry Potter is always released on my birthday. Like almost every time it's November 16th, maybe sometimes 17th, but almost every time it's November 16th.
I can't remember if we've talked about this yet. Have you gotten into the Rings of Power yet?
No.
Refusal, or you tried and you didn't like it?
I think it's part refusal. Yeah, it's mostly refusal, just because I just don't like the idea of Amazon getting their grubby hands on my Tolkien books, and because since they have bought the rights to Lord of the Rings, I feel like I have been inundated with Lord of the Rings keyboard, Lord of the Rings t-shirts, Lord of the Rings sweaters.
Oh, really? I haven't noticed that.
I feel like it's everywhere, and I also, maybe this is just the bitter nerd in me, Lord of the Rings has now become so popular that it now feels like it's very mainstream to like, which I always liked the fact that I felt special while watching it, you know?
Well, okay. So
But
first
then
of
again,
all,
when it came out, it got like every single award.
I
So
was
obviously
gonna say,
tons of people
I was like,
it.
the box office smash hits all three of the movies when they came out. And the last one won Best Picture.
It's true.
So it's
You're
hard
right,
to
you're
say
right,
that
you're
it's
right.
like a niche thing that only nerds like. It really, those movies made it not nerdy anymore. It's sort of like now people like, oh, I love Star Wars. I'm such a nerd. And it's like, oh, you like one of the most popular franchises of all time? What a nerd you are. Like,
Hey, true.
it's not the case anymore.
What-
And I feel like in many ways that's how Lord of the Rings has
Even
become.
D&D has become less nerdy over time. Now
Which-
we have Baldur's Gate.
I will say I finally watched the Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Loved it.
It's super fun.
Loved it,
it's
man.
super
Come
fun.
on. It was so good. And I'm like regretful I didn't see it in the theaters and give it more support and love, but I loved it, dude.
It was hilarious, lighthearted, and you could tell when they were 20s and when they were people rolling ones in the movie. Like my
And-
favorite scene was
yes.
the undead thing with the questions, because I could
Yeah.
just totally imagine some just like total like shit grin fucking DM being like, oh, that was a question too, now he's dead.
Yep.
And then all the people sitting around the table are like, oh, come on, you know exactly what I meant by that.
I also felt like it really captured what it's like to play D&D because half of it is you're laughing. It's adventure and it's this and that and blah, blah, blah. But it's like so much of it is you just
It's comedy.
laughing with your friends
Yeah.
about the silly situations you're getting yourselves into. And like, I even loved to where another perfect example of how D&D works when they're in the lava world, the underworld or whatever, and they're trying to, I can't remember, they're retrieving something from down there, and they've got the kind of guide who's with them, and they come to the bridge,
Yes.
and he's explaining this complicated pattern of how they're supposed to get across it or whatever. And then the guy missteps and the bridge collapses. And then the barbarian woman is like, well, with my axe, I could probably hook a rope to it and I could chuck it across, but I would have to get a really strong throw, which is literally a roll a d20.
Yes.
And so it's like, I could probably get a strong throw and then I could make my way across and then blah, 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 blah. And then somebody goes, oh no, I got the staff, the teleporter. It works. It literally works at 500 yards. So watch, bink, bink, and I just walk across. And it's like, it is exactly how D&D works. Like one person just has
It's
an
so
out of the
true.
box idea and goes, well, guys, instead of that, like, what if we literally just like walked
Did the
around
thing
it
that
over
was in
here?
our inventory.
And they're like, oh yeah. Okay, we'll just do a roll for it, do a roll check and make sure that you are above 7. That's a 12. Yeah, you're good. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was great.
Yeah, it was
I
great.
really, really, really loved it. But I was back to Rings of Power really quickly.
Okay.
It is so much better than it has any right to be. I'm just gonna say that right now.
Caleb has said the same thing. I think what threw me off was some of the scripting seems like it sounds flowery for the sake to be flowery, and also elves should not have short hair.
Okay, I hear you. And I do also agree about the scripting.
And people were like mad, were like, oh, there's black elves. I don't care about that. They should have long braids, and then everybody should have long hair. Elves do not have short hair. It's just not. That I think was like the thing that bothered me the most, is that they sounded like they were pretending to be Shakespeare as opposed to being the very eloquent written words of somebody like Tolkien. And then also, you can't mess with the elf aesthetic. It's supposed to be this Art Nouveau, very long, sleek. You know what I'm saying?
I do. And I will also fully concede that is one of the things that I will sometimes be thinking about when the show is going on. Like, there's one point where an orc says something like somebody goes off into this dark woods, and the orc goes like, "Oh, that's the Blackwoods. Nobody survives the Blackwoods. And I went, okay.
Tolkien would never have said that. You know what I'm saying?
What the orc should have said is, oh, nobody survives the Blackwoods. And that would have been it. That's all you had to say as the orc.
Yes.
And we would have understood, oh, that's the Blackwoods and nobody survives. But you calling it out and going, them's the Blackwoods and nobody survives the Blackwoods. It's like, that's not how an orc would talk.
Yes.
So I will concede that there are...
The scripting is a little funky.
There are times
But I do
where,
like the fact that it's like the story of Celebrimbor and the story of, not Arwen, Galadriel.
Galadriel
Yeah.
and who am I thinking of? Elrond.
Elrond.
And I'm just saying, give it a shot because it was one of those movies. It was one of those shows that I didn't want to watch. I was like, no, I think it's going to be stupid. I really love Lord of the Rings, and I just, why are they doing this? It's so unnecessary.
I'm such a purist when it comes to Tolkien specifically.
But I'm telling you, especially after those Hobbit movies, which just sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, if you edited those three down,
if you rewatch it, it's not terrible. You're right. It should all have been one movie.
Or 2 parts. And if they had just really stuck to the story of The Hobbit, but they added all this extra crap and all this stuff that happens in Lake Town that didn't actually happen in the book, and all this stuff of like Gandalf going to fight the ghost of Morgoth, who actually was the pre-something of Sauron, like, nonsense. Just stop it. Like, it doesn't need to be there at all. It's just so unnecessary or whatever. If you edited it down to being something more concise and digestible, I think it would have been really good. That being said, I'm just telling you, you gotta watch Rings of Power. I promise you, you will enjoy it. It's like, I didn't want to. I really didn't want to enjoy it. And then I got like an episode in and was like, oh, next episode, dang it. And then when season 1 ended, I was like, oh man, season 2, come on. Like, I know. I'm just telling you right now.
That's fair.
So you got to get into it, man. It's especially if you say, I like Lord of the Rings. I'm telling you, I mean, to 85% of the movie adaptations, it really does it justice.
I am excited for War of the Rohirrim. You heard of that one?
That's like an anime that's coming out, right?
Yeah, it's going to be done, I think, by Trigger, which is like one of the best studios. They're known for blowing budgets completely out of the water just for the sake of having just the most amazing animation humanly possible.
Cool.
And they're going to have, I think they're actually going to have the lady who voiced Éomer be the narrator.
I think I saw that, yeah.
For the
Éowyn, right?
Éowyn.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was Éomer. Wait, who am I?
Éowyn is the Rohirrim princess from the Lord of the Rings.
Oh,
with the cleft chin.
I thought it was Éomer. Who is Éomer? Is Éomer the brother, or am I just making up a name in my head?
He might be the brother, or he might be Carl Urban's character. I can't remember. But I know for a fact she is Éowyn.
Yeah, Éowyn.
Because I remember the king being like, Éowyn.
You're right. You're right. I always mixed her with Arwen.
Yes. Well, you probably know this because you're a Lord of the Rings dork. Do you know what Tolkien's favorite word phrase was?
No.
It will illuminate. Oh my God. If you rewatch any of Lord of the Rings movies, you're going to go, okay, that weirdly makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And me saying it with an American accent doesn't quite do it justice, but it's cellar door.
Cellar door?
Think about that for a second. Now, he had an English accent to be like, cellar door.
Oh, yeah.
So his favorite word mouth soup was cellar door. And if you rewatch Lord of the Rings, you're going to be hearing all these phrases of like Calimor and Celebrimbor.
Yeah, you're right.
Isildur. And like all these things that you're like, oh, dude, it's like you're trying to rework cellar door into all these different phrases because you love how it sounds.
That's so funny.
That was how it...
Cellar door. That is so funny.
Cellar door. So yeah, but again, me saying cellar door, it's not quite the same as like a upright...
Cellar door.
English person is like, oh yes, the cellar door. Like it just sounds so much more regal.
Like, hey,
you know?
That's a basement.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, I thought that was pretty interesting because again, it like illuminates so much of the language of Lord of the Rings and how he like shaped it and all that kind of stuff. So, well, should we get into questions and corrections and all that good stuff?
Yeah, let's do it. Do you
want to go first or you want me to go first?
You go first.
Okay. So I have a pretty nice little handful. This might take a few minutes to get through, But there's some good ones. So first and foremost, we had a listener write to us named Candace. Hi, Candace. We got your email. And she mentioned there's a musical called 1776, which we had brought up a long time ago in the Abigail Adams series, and how it related, again, to our Abigail Adams series. I already said that. I'm reading from my script and also partly trying to ad-lib. This isn't effective. Now, Candace informed us that throughout the musical, Abigail would sign her letters to her husband, John Adams, with Pins Abigail. So instead of saying like love Abigail, it would say Pins Abigail.
As in she needs more pins.
Well, it was just sort of her phrase that she would say, and I don't know that it was necessarily to say I need more pins.
Because didn't she sell needles or something like that?
She did, which is what I was going to bring up next. It was a direct reference to her side hustle, which was a pin business that she ran throughout the Revolutionary War, as there was a pin shortage at the time. And to add my own correction, I think I had actually said something to the effect in that series about how I couldn't find any reference to pins in 1776, the musical. Aubrey said something about it. She was like, oh yeah, I think I read somewhere that there's something about the pins. I tried to look through all the song lyrics and I didn't see anything. So my guess is that like throughout the musical, it's not technically part of a song, more of like a, in between the songs or whatever, it's kind of like a melody that's happening. And then she said, Pins Abigail. So just wanted to throw that in as my own correction because I was like, nope, I didn't see it anywhere. And as Candace pointed out to us here, she does. She says it apparently throughout the entire musical. She says Pins Abigail. And I think there's also something to the effect of John Adams signing it like something about salt. I would have to look at the email again. Candace outlined it for me and everything. It was like John would sign it in a similar way, like salt something, but it was in reference to him wanting salt on his food because that was like his big thing or whatever. So anyways, just want to say thank you, Candace, for the information. And Candace also said that she was a big fan of the musical and recommended that we check it out, especially if we're feeling particularly patriotic.
Okay.
So I love musicals. I have no shame in loving musicals. I think I texted you the other day about Sound of Music because I was watching Sound of Music. Yeah. I love it. I have no shame about it. I think it's great.
I'm selective about my musicals. Both of my parents, I always made fun of them. I called them 80s Broadway dropouts because they would just sing every musical under the sun. They just riff off of each other because both of them were like theater kids. My mom wanted to go to Juilliard. She actually got accepted, but there's a whole family drama that didn't allow her to move there.
Sure.
And I think my favorites, it's very selective. I like Rent. At first, I thought it was corny because my mom really, really, really liked Rent.
Sure.
So it's like, if my mom likes this, it must be corny. And then I got older, rewatched Rent recently, and I was like, no, this is actually very, very good. Then Phantom of the Opera is probably
Phantom's
my all-time favorite, bar none. Oh, and Chicago.
Chicago's also great.
Which I know that those. Oh, I also watched. Okay, this is a tough one because it really depends on the cast. But Wicked is actually pretty good.
I did not care for Wicked.
That's fair. That's fair. I got to see Wicked live with either the first or second cast iteration, and it was pretty solid. I do think that theater kids who really like Wicked are generally kind of obnoxious. I went to a theater school. My wife and I both went to a performing arts school when we were in high school. That's how we met. And theater kids who like Wicked were just like the smelly ones. That's just what it is.
So my thing with Wicked was I thought the set design was great. I thought the production was great, especially at the end of before it goes into intermission when the Wicked Witch is getting brought up and she's like, look to the western skies, that whole thing was really cool to see. My main issue with it was that I just didn't appreciate that somebody took somebody else's story that meant a lot to them and had a lot of allegory and a lot of meaning and a lot of specific ideas of what something should be. And they basically just took a big, gigantic dump on it.
We will talk about that a lot with Mary Shelley.
Okay.
Because Frankenstein, I mean, come on. If you read the original Frankenstein, it is a very different thing than the guy from the Munsters teaching you about family values.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Like,
I totally understand that. But there is a certain recognition, I think, that we have to have that it's like once you put it out in the world, they will almost entirely forget what we see this all the time with religious texts culturally. It's like there are so many different interpretations of the same religious text, and if we were reading very literally, there are lots of different interpretations of Frankenstein that are just completely left field from what the actual text intends. And same thing with Wizard of Oz. There's no implication that Glinda and the Wicked Witch had like some sort of relationship before or anything like that. And then they just decided to go nuts with it because it stopped becoming a book and it started becoming a cultural item.
And maybe that just comes from me not only loving the movie, but I did read the Wizard of Oz book, and it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And so I think for me, when I went to go watch Wicked, I didn't really know super what to expect. But when it was all said and done, I was just like, man, like it just feels like the person that wrote this didn't even like the Wizard of Oz. And I know that people be like, no, they actually really loved it. And they just wanted to put this other spin on it. And I get that. Just for my own personal tastes, I was like, it felt really disrespectful, to be honest with you, like to this author's amazing contribution to the world of fantasy and cinema and writing. So just my personal opinion. And I know I'm in the minority because every other person that I ever knew was like, no, Wicked is one of my favorite musicals ever. So
I understand. For me, a lot of my favorite things were just ruined by the fandom. Like, I love Doctor Who, but sometimes Doctor Who fans could be too much, too nerdy, too dorky. I really enjoyed Supernatural, same situation. Sherlock, Super Wholock, they used to call it. That was like the fandom, which was like those three shows were like the holy trinity of like these extra dorky kids.
Dorky shows.
Which is really funny because if anybody knew me from high school, I even dressed up as David Tennant for Halloween one year.
Nice.
As David Tennant's doctor. But
Doctor number 10.
Yes, number 10. I always thought his sonic screwdriver was the coolest looking.
Oh, Matt Smith's is the coolest for sure.
Do you think so?
Oh yeah, that like opens up and it's green. Oh, so cool, dude.
It's green, sure, but like this one was extendo and it was slimmer. I like the fact that it was slimmer.
I don't know, the little claw thing that would like open up from Matt Smith's one.
It looked like a little lightsaber.
So
I didn't
cool.
like it as much.
I loved it. But I will say, lastly, before we move on, my favorite musical, The Music Man.
That checks out.
Dude, The Music Man is so good.
That about 700 times because that was one of my dad's replays along with Oliver Twist. So Music Man I'm a little tired of, but
I can understand that. I just personally find the whole thing really funny. It's just a funny story, and like but
like a con man in a small town. Yeah,
not just that. Like when he's doing the trouble, my friends, and he there's points where he's like when they're using certain words like swell, and they'll go trouble, and he goes and so's your old man, and that like these phrases that are so innocent and innocuous, but to this like sheltered community saying swell is like, whoa, I don't know, cracks me up. I just think it's really funny.
I could see that. You've seen the Music Man type. I like that.
I was, not only do I love it, and it's been one of my favorites since I was a kid, but when I was in middle school and I was in 8th grade, it was the only musical I was actually in, and my school put it on, and it was great. I wasn't any of the main characters. I was just a chorus guy, but it was still
really?
Great.
You should have been the main character. I mean this with all the love in the world, but you look to me like you would have a wagon that sold potions that didn't work in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Sam from Dropout.
Oh, that's true.
That's
I
what
forgot about
Pete Holmes calls him
that. Pete Holmes thing. I forgot about that.
I wanted to be Marcellus. I wanted to be Buddy Hackett's character.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I at the time I didn't really practice singing ever, and I think I was not a very good singer, and so it just.
I always ended up getting like. I always wanted to be the nefarious characters. Like I feel like if I were to typecast myself, if you are the huckster of snake oil, I feel like I'm the twisting mustache villain. Where I'm like, but like none of my plans are actually that devious, but I think they are.
You're like Nefarious from Ratchet and Clank.
Yes, that's me. Or Waluigi or something.
All right. Well, next correction here. And not necessarily corrections. Some of them are just sort of expanding on certain things. But in Franz List Part 3, we were talking about Franz putting on charity concerts to benefit flood victims in Hungary, and I compared it to Live Aid. And we couldn't remember the name of the person who put on Live Aid. That was Bob Geldof. And I think most people who were listening probably knew that, and for whatever reason, we brain farted, or I specifically brain farted. And additionally, I made allusions to the idea that Bob Geldof may not have given all the money to African famine relief, but from what I have read, it's pretty widely accepted that Geldof did give the proceeds to various relief efforts in Africa, though many have criticized how he gave the money, as apparently it sometimes ended up in the wrong hands when contributed contributed to even more corruption. So like he gave it to certain political parties that were like, oh, we're not actually going to use it to feed these people. We're actually going to use it for political advancement.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
That's fair.
So that was kind of one of the things that people have criticized him on. But that's all I'll say on it, as I didn't really dive super deep into it, and you can all do your own homework on that subject. And additionally, I'd like to briefly say that Franz was not the first person to put on a charity concert. That credit goes to the famed composer George Friedrich Handel, who first did it in 1749.
Gotcha.
So just wanted to, I kind of said that, I was like, yeah, I think he was like the original Live Aid, and that's not true. There were people that did it before him, so just wanted to throw that out there.
Good to know.
Now, next up in part 4 of Franz Liszt, we briefly talked about the composition Clair de Lune. Remember that? Which is one of the most popular compositions of all time. And I incorrectly gave credit of that to Brahms. It was Debussy. And I knew that. And I don't know why. I was like listening back to the recording. I was like, oh, no, that's Brahms. And I was like, no, that's Debussy. What were you thinking, dude? Like, it just was.
Well, that's fine. I didn't think it was either of them. So
yeah, it just vomited out of my brain. So for every person out there that twitched in their car when they, heard me say that Clair de Lune was by Brahms, I was wrong. It was Debussy.
Good to know.
And also some people say Debussy, but he was French. And from what I've heard from people,
Debussy.
It was Debussy. So
Debussy.
Yeah. Debussy. Yeah, it's true.
The Buckies.
All right. Next up in Franz Liszt Part 5, I briefly mentioned the process in which Franz earned the title of Abbé, but I wanted to add a little more clarity. Now, while everything I said was true, he did receive a tonsure, gave his first confession and all that, but that was technically not when he earned the title of Abbé. He was a clergyman at that point, but a few months later, he received 4 more orders. Okay? Yeah. Now, an order is basically a vow you take as a Catholic, which then puts you into kind of like a club or a group. So like in Harry Potter, there's the Order of the Phoenix, which was this collection of people devoted to fighting Voldemort and the Death Eaters. So they were part of the Order of the Phoenix, and that was what they did, right? That was their mission kind of a thing. So Franz became part of the Order of Porters, Lectors, Acolytes, and Exorcists.
Oh.
So Franz Liszt was technically an exorcist.
That's funny.
Which is pretty awesome. And the other ones like porter, lector, acolyte, one, it means like you can like give a lecture to a church or like a sermon, basically. Another means that you are the order of students. So you're always trying to learn various things like that. So anyways.
And that gives some insight to Cesare Borgia as well, because we were talking about how he had been selected to be a bishop and did not fulfill any of his holy orders.
Ah, there you go. So that was, if he was part of any of these specific orders and he just didn't do any of them, then there you go.
He was like, you're of the order of not torturing people. And he was like, anyway.
Which, listeners, we haven't mentioned this at all yet. Just before we started recording, I made Akiva watch the movie Listomania from 1975.
Yeah, how are we talking about all these Halloween movies and we didn't talk about the movie we just watched?
That was why I had us watch it first. I figured we would talk about it a lot.
A total, man, it was just insane. It was truly insane. If you have listened to the Franz Liszt series, you will get a lot from it.
Yes.
But be warned.
Yes.
It is through the murkiest, most shag carpety 70s vibe possible.
It's like watching the life of Franz Liszt through a kaleidoscope.
That is exactly through a kaleidoscope. But so it's the life of Franz Liszt,
a kaleidoscope
and then there's a bunch
that very
of nudists,
often takes off women's clothing,
and then you put a kaleidoscope in front of them. So like, there's a movie about Franz Liszt playing, then there's a bunch of nudists in front of it, and then you put the kaleidoscope up to your eye, and you look past the nudists to the movie. That's exactly how to describe
this. This is not a porno or anything, anybody.
It's not, but it is the 70s.
There's a lot of boobs. I'll tell you that right now. But it was weird finishing the Franz Liszt series and then watching the movie. He and I talked about it for 15 or 20 minutes and about how like weirdly there was a lot of accuracy there.
As trippy as it was, this was definitely made by somebody who knew a lot about Franz Liszt.
Yes. So again, if anybody out there listens to this episode and did not listen to the Franz Liszt series, I would say if you're curious, listen to the series on Franz Liszt, actually learn about his life and what kind of happened and the characters that were a part of it. And then if you're doubly curious, check out the movie from 1975, Listomania. There is actually a link to it on our website in the Franz Liszt sources, so you can actually watch it for free.
Nice.
But be warned, again, it is quite R-rated.
Not safe for work.
Yes, it's not going to be a movie for the kids. It's going to be a movie for just, when you're by yourself or with your buddies or anything like that.
Lots of like smoky, natural toned phallic imagery.
Lots of penises.
Lots of penises.
Not fake penises, like models
they're real
of
boobs.
them.
Fake penises.
Yes, it's
again, so 70s. It's so
very weird. But I was going to say the reason I brought it up was because at the very end, there's a point where, even though this is not actually accurate in what happened in Franz Liszt's life, there's a point where Franz Liszt says to Richard Wagner, "The Pope sent me here to exorcise you." So that's not true, but Franz Liszt was an exorcist. So theoretically, he did have that ability. If that was actually a real thing, if the Pope believed that Richard Wagner was possessed by a demon, theoretically, that would have been possible that the Pope could have said, "Franz, go exorcise him."
Which, fun fact, in the movie, Wagner is sort of made to be a very literal metaphor for Hitler.
Yes.
Later on. The Pope in World War II did try to have a long-distance exorcism of Adolf Hitler.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Maybe that was where that was the interpretation of that scene.
Yes, it was a popular news story that the Pope tried to exorcise Hitler.
Did not know that.
Like long distance.
Crazy.
Like over the phone or something. I don't know.
All right. Well, next up here, in episode 5 of Franz Liszt, I talked a good deal about Richard Wagner, but one fact I wanted to share that I just thought was interesting. I mentioned that Wagner was always in debt. Well, just before he was allowed to come back to Germany, remember he was living in exile because of there was the Dresden uprising and he was a part of it. And then the king of Germany banished him from Germany, right? So he was living in exile. And just before he was going to come back to Germany, a new king was crowned in Germany named King Ludwig II, who was 18 years old at the time and had absolutely adored Richard Wagner's work. So he decided to reach out to Wagner to invite him to conduct some operas in Munich. Now, part of his proposal included paying off all of Wagner's vast amounts of debts. Now, additionally, King Ludwig II was a gay man, and apparently had expressed some not so subtle admirations towards Wagner in his letters.
I'm very confused at how Wagner would have taken that.
Okay, well, check this out, okay? So Wagner, he was basically desperate to accept the appointment to go make music in Munich, and he was also desperate to have his debts paid off. So when he started to kind of pick up the hint from King Ludwig II that he was like, hey, also Wagner, if you just like wanted to stop by for the night kind of a thing and like maybe, just like not leave until the morning, Wagner was basically like, yeah, sure, maybe that sounds pretty good. Like, maybe we could get together and basically Wagner was a jerk and basically was like, I'll tell the king whatever he wants to hear if it means he'll pay off my debts and hire me to come back to Germany.
He's so manipulative.
So it wasn't like this, well, I'm open-minded and I guess I can go sleep with him for a night and then like that'll be cool.
Get some money, yeah.
No. It was literally like Wagner was like, look, I know he's gay, so I'll just tell him, I'll make him think that I'm interested in doing that when in reality he had no intention of doing that.
Why is he such a dick?
Wagner sucked, man.
Yeah, he really did. He really sucked like from the beginning to the end of the story.
So anyways,
'cause I was about to say, there's no way that this man was accepting of gay folks at all.
Yeah.
No.
So, yeah, this whole thing, it's ultimately what led him back to Germany and eventually steal another man's wife, who was Cosima. So this was before he had even met Cosima. This was him just being like, oh yeah, sure, this will get me back to Germany. I'll pretend to be like reciprocating feelings for King Ludwig. And that was how he ended up meeting Cosima. And this actually is one of the most interesting traits of Wagner, as Hans von Bülow was also taken under his spell and was such a massive admirer of Wagner that he really didn't seem to mind that Cosima was having an affair with his wife, basically, right? With Wagner. So Hans von Bülow was like, yeah, this is all fine. At least, for the most part. Hans had his own issues with it, but like, to a degree, Hans von Bülow kind of felt like, well, I get it. I get the magnetism of Richard Wagner. So whatever, what will be kind of a thing. And anyways, this is all really just to say that like Wagner was super manipulative and just seemed to, in a very sort of similar way to Franz Liszt, had just this magnetism to him that people wanted to be with, you know? So anyways, I just thought that was kind of an interesting little factoid. I didn't have much time or like the ability to really expand upon it in the episode, but I wanted to at least put that out there here as another like reason that we hate Richard Wagner. But anyhow, thought that was kind of interesting.
Wow, ye old queer baiting. That's insane.
Yeah, that's basically exactly what it was. Just like, was that.
Yeah, interesting.
Now, also in episode 5 of Franz Liszt, I mentioned one of Kanye West's albums as High School Dropout, and it is in fact College Dropout.
Yeah.
That was my bad.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even as soon as I said it, it was as soon as I listened back to it, I was like, no, it's College Dropout. What was I thinking? Like, it wasn't High School Dropout. But anyways, I know there's going to be some Kanye fan out there who's going to be like, hey, hang on.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add that in as a little correction.
Yeah.
Now, again, in episode 5, Akiva thought he had heard somewhere that Wagner believed himself to be the reincarnation of Ludwig von Beethoven.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from what I have read, he didn't believe himself to be the reincarnation, but rather the successor to Beethoven.
I see.
Okay. So, kind of meaning that he was like, you know, the new greatest musician in the world after Beethoven's death.
Gotcha.
So not necessarily
like taking on the legacy, but he doesn't think that he was actually spiritually connected to him.
Correct.
I see.
So it was more like saying, I'm the new Beethoven. It's like, I think there was a time where Bruno Mars was going, I'm the new Michael Jackson. And it's like,
Kendrick Lamar does the single white glove sometimes in some of his concerts because he also feels like he has a connection to Michael Jackson. Also, To Pimp a Butterfly. I mean, it was originally supposed to be To Pimp a Caterpillar, which would have read to be Tupac on the album, right?
Oh, that's cool.
Because he saw that he was some sort of successor to Tupac. So so the connection's not, the similarities are still there, but he didn't think he was actually spiritually the reincarnation of him.
Gotcha. Cool.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, you're exactly right. He was the successor. Now, my last little tidbit here, and again, for any listeners, if you've caught other things that I have not, please write us. You can shoot us an email at thebiographerspodcast@gmail.com. But the last one that I have noted here was, again, in episode 5, I mentioned a student of Franz's named Amy Faye. And I couldn't quite recall what group she was in charge of. I think I'd said something like the women's, like, musicians, something or other, and I couldn't quite remember. She was the manager of the New York Women's Philharmonic Society. So, again, specifically in New York, and it was for the Society of Women who were basically trying to get into orchestras.
I see.
I couldn't find a whole lot of information on this group because it doesn't seem like they're there anymore. Again, if listeners know otherwise and you're like, nope, actually they reformed as this, please let me know. I would be very interested to know. But that was all I could really find on it from that side of things. So there we go. There's my list of little corrections and expand-upons and all that good stuff.
Sweet, man. Yeah, that's awesome.
So what do you got for us?
Okay, so I have 2. The first one, it's funny, you know, despite the fact that I do my best not to I would not consider myself an incredible ambassador to, you know, Judaism because it's, you know, it doesn't take up every single second of my life. It ends up showing up a lot in some of the conversations, especially with folks like Wagner. I mentioned when we were talking about Richard Wagner's anti-Semitism that a lot of people who ran banks and did loans were Jewish culturally, and I accredited the reason to a lack of the ability to own land to do things like agriculture. While that is historically true in a lot of areas, there is actually a religious reason as to why Jewish folks became bankers and tax collectors.
Okay.
Which is the Catholic Church believed that it was sinful to handle money, so good Christians were not allowed to do it. So the Catholic Church physically appointed Jewish people to become moneylenders and tax creditors, which was highly advantageous for a religion that was trying not to seem guilty of doing anything wrong by taking a group of people that lived in Europe that was not associated with everybody else's religion and having them operate money lending services.
Interesting.
So it was an intentional scapegoat, but as the result of religious doctrine that said that handling money was not kosher, for lack of a better term.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Right? And then I have one set of corrections for another thing. Once again, we were talking about Judaism, about eating properly in kosher law and all that my mom actually sent to me as a voice message. So I'm going to pull that up for you guys right now.
Hey, mi niño. So I'm listening to Office Hours Milkshake Plates, and I had to do a couple of corrections for you. One, space camp was a whole year before we got a divorce. One. And yes, everything that you experienced in camp was accurate, and the nosebleed. You slept walk into an empty bunk. That's what happened. Then a blech is not an oven. It is a food warmer. It's you create a food warmer on top of the stove, or an electric one that was used in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And you use that to warm your food for lunch. The oven you can leave on, whether it's gas or electric, from before you light till the whole of Shabbat, right? Until Havdalah. But the blech itself is not a specially built oven. The blech is just a surface that can warm, and you can do it with the eyes of your stove by putting a piece of aluminum and then bringing all the eyes down real low. Not recommended to do with gas, but you can with electric. And a lot of people did it with gas. I just didn't. Or the electric one. I'll have other corrections for you, but I loved it. And I'm sorry I didn't buy you Legos. I love you, buddy.
So there we go.
I'm sorry I didn't buy you Legos is my favorite send-off.
She sent me other corrections, but they were all wrong, so I'm not going to share them.
Okay.
But yes, I was wrong about the blech. And yeah, there you go.
Well, cool. Thanks, Mom, for the corrections. Keep them coming if you hear them, obviously, especially, well, not especially necessarily, but anything you've said a minute ago, you're like, I don't feel like I'm the best ambassador for Judaism or whatever. I love learning this kind of stuff. You make fun of me for it. I think it's interesting. So please do any of these sort of, Jewish laws and traditions and customs or whatever. I would very much like to know more about them. So please do send them our way.
Yes. I'm sure my mom will correct me even more later. Love you, Mom.
Well, cool. Anything else we want to cover? Are you good?
I think that's it.
I think so too. And if I catch, again, I would just want to say it for the second or third time in this episode or whatever, for anybody that's out there listening, we would definitely appreciate it if you did actually hear something that you went, hey, no, I don't think that that's necessarily true. Even if you sent it our way, we'll cross-verify it and see if we can find more information on it. But please do reach out to us. Send us an email at thebiographerspodcast@gmail.com. And we'll even give you a little shout out like we did earlier with Candace.
So far, nobody has challenged me on almost anything that I've said about Leonardo da Vinci.
Nobody has challenged me on anything of any of the series that I've done so far, which I find
it's just
impossible.
Been self-criticisms?
Yes.
Okay.
And me identifying things that I'm like, wait, I don't know if that's necessarily true, and then researching it on my own and going, oh, that was something else or whatever. So...
Oh, I have one my mom mentioned, and I said El Giocondo, and she said it's La Gioconda, but I said La Gioconda. She just didn't hear it right because she's nuts. How about that, Mom?
Oh,
no, I'm just kidding. I love you.
It's like, don't do that.
No, I'm just kidding. That's our relationship. Is we just annoy each other. That's just how it works.
That seems healthy.
I love my mom. It is. It's very healthy.
No, actually, I do agree. I think that there's something about it where it's like, if you feel like you constantly have to walk on eggshells around your relationships, there's probably something unhealthy that's happening.
Yes.
Whereas if you feel comfortable enough to make fun of each other.
Smile for the family photo type of family. Like, we got problems, we talk about them pretty much immediately, which can sometimes be a pain, but 90% of the time it's good. So, that's my mom and I's relationship. Like, when I cut my thumb, my mom used to be a nurse. And like I said, I ran my thumb through a grinder, cut off my my nail bed, and she's the first person to call for any emergency because it's free healthcare right there. And I just started cursing in the middle of class, and I didn't realize she had me on speaker, and I think I might have gotten her in trouble with school. That's the type of relationship we have. I was like, my fucking thumb, I can't believe it. And she's like, calm down, you're on speaker. And I was like, I don't give a shit if I'm on speaker. You put me on. I eventually calmed down afterwards, but I just needed somebody to witness the fact that I hurt my thumb.
I hear you.
So
somebody to commiserate with you. I understand.
Exactly.
I understand. Well, you guys are opposite of my family, which we're kind of smile for the family photos these days.
Yeah.
all good. I don't want to stir any drama up or anything.
You don't want to not smile for the family photo?
Oh, yeah. At least we can continue to have a family photo. You know what I mean?
That's true.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for this episode of Office Hours. A couple things we'll just sort of go through as we close out here. First and foremost, do you have something else? Oh, okay. If anybody out there is enjoying the show and wants to give us some support, obviously, like we've been pitching for a while now, help us out on Patreon. That's going to be patreon.com/thebiographers. I'll also give a specific thank you to both my mom, who started supporting us on
Hell
Patreon.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
We're in a basement being supported by our moms.
I know, right?
Our podcast.
But then also my friend Charlotte.
Hell yeah. Charlotte, honestly, has been #1 super fan since the beginning.
She has, and she also, she was texting me the other day because she was like, dude, I went to your website and there's no link to your Patreon on there. Go fix that. And I was like...
we need Charlotte
right.
in as a manager or something.
Dude, I keep telling her, like, dude, please keep telling me these things because I just sometimes just don't think of them, you know?
Yeah.
She's like, no, put them all over the place. Put them everywhere where people can find them. So... And again, like a day or so ago, I woke up to an email that was like, Charlotte Stanley is now supporting you on Patreon. And I was like, oh, Charlotte. So thank you, Charlotte. You'll probably be listening to this episode, so I'll give you a little shout out and appreciate you. Next up is going to be things like social media. You can find us on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram at The Biographers, except for Instagram, which is at the.biographers. We also have a Kickstarter that is in flight right now, which I'm just going to be transparent with everybody. I don't have much hope for. I don't necessarily. I told you a few days ago that somebody had
just about to
put in a purchase for the knife, and then I was like, oh, yay! And I found out that it was just a bait and switch for a marketer who was trying to get us to sign up for their services.
No.
Yeah. And then relinquished their contribution.
I guess I'll have to keep all
so
these
now
cool
we are
knives.
at $5 of contributions
Out of
10,000.
Oh.
So again, I have very little hope for it, but hey, who knows? Crazier things have happened. So if anybody out there is able to support us there, really, we're just trying to collect some extra money for some marketing efforts to see if we can get the word out there a little bit more, do some promotions.
Yeah.
And there are rewards with that.
Yeah. I mean, fact of the matter is, minimum around 6 to 8 hours of our week is devoted to writing these scripts.
Oh, at least.
Often more. I'm probably being polite about it.
Yeah.
And with the way our schedules work, we do have to end up a lot of the times working on a work day in order to make it happen. So
and weekends.
Even if we were to just be able to produce enough income for one day of work per week for us to do the biographers, that would help out tremendously.
It would. So if anybody out there is able to support us, that's going to be kickstarter.com/
and Patreon.
And Patreon, obviously, yes. Patreon.com/thebiographers. But on the Kickstarter, if you did want to get a little reward in return, that's going to be kickstarter.com/profile/thebiographers. And then you can also go and find knives and all your lovely metalworking needs at Akiva's website. That's metalworkbymiola.com, MEOLA. And you can also use the code biographers at checkout to get 10% off your order.
Absolutely.
And then you've also been pitching to your Hardy and Fuller stuff if you wanted to give that a shout out at all.
I was just about to say, if you are in the Colorado area, specifically the Denver area, I teach at Hardy and Fuller 2 times every month. We teach classes all the way from complete beginners. I've never even picked up a hammer. I've never done any forging, all the way now to some advanced classes where we're actually teaching people how to do forge weld techniques by hand. So we'll be teaching a Sanmai class this October. We also have some very lovely 5-hour classes if you just want to dip your toe into it. We have some stock removal classes where we have knives that are laser cut out on a plasma cutter, and you can just add handles, learn how to grind bevels, and have a nice, cool, sharp knife by the end of it. You get a whole variety of knives that you can pick from. And later in October, we will also be having a tomahawk class, which will be throwing and cutting up some pumpkins. We'll do it as some 1/4 inch, 50/160 or 10/75, I'm not sure. And they'll be plased out, meaning they'll be cut for you. And then you slap on some handle scales, grind the bevels, and you have a cool hatchet that you can keep with you.
Nice.
I designed it myself.
I didn't know you were doing a hatchet. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Well, right on. I think that's going to do it for us for today. So again, thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed our random conversation and random corrections and questions. But remember, ignorance is not stupidity. It is the absence of knowledge. And I do hope you all learned something today.
See ya.
You've been listening to The Biographers. For more information, please visit thebiographerspodcast.com.